Good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well tonight. I have a question for you. Have you ever sat at your desk and thought to yourself, wow, I must have been doing it wrong? These other clowns are out there living their best lives. They have their dream businesses while I'm stuck here in this job. If you have, you're not alone. And tonight we're going to look at one way or one thing that's really, I think, holding you back. And it's not a lack of good ideas or a lack of capital. It's fear. And when we address that fear, man, we can set the world on fire. I'm Scott Todd, and I'm glad you're with me. This channel is dedicated to helping you build passive income and to create a business that will give you more time to live the life that you want. And if you can relate to that introduction, then you and I are a lot alike, because I was that guy sitting at the desk wondering, like, why not me? I'm smart, I'm capable, and I would see all these people. They'd be out there playing golf during the week, or it seems like they retired when they were 30. What about me? Where's my opportunity? And I was the type of guy that I always had these ideas. I always had some business brewing. Well, what about this? What about that? What if I tried this? You want to talk about the side hustle idea machine? It was right here. Like, I could come up with ideas like that. I think my wife got sick of them. Honestly, I think she put up with them, but she was just like, okay. And some of these things, they were like the next big Facebook to something that seemed like simple and small, but I always dreamed that I wanted to do more. But yet I sat in that cubicle or in that office just saying, I guess it's not for me. And if you can relate to that, please give me a like or say me, because I know I'm not alone. I'm sure that you can relate to that. But at one point, it was around 2014, I was forced to really get my act together and really finally confront that one thing that was really holding me back. And as I dug deep into it, I realized, you know what? It wasn't for a lack of ideas. It wasn't for a lack of capital. It really came down to one thing and one thing alone. And that was, I was scared. I was scared of success, maybe success of my own business. I was scared that, I had been a corporate employee, a paycheck employee my entire life. I couldn't imagine, oh my gosh, what would happen if the economy tanked, or what would happen if the company didn't succeed? Where would I be? What about my family? What about my house? All of these things were all the things that were really holding me back. And in my case, in 2014, I had pretty good reason to believe that my VP job at Hertz, I talked about it even last week, would be coming to an end, because the writing was on the wall. The CEO's name was on the wall of shame. Let's just put it like that. And I knew I really had to get out and start swimming and, and really get out of my comfort zone. And it took a while. It really took a while to dig deep to understand the fears, or really the fears that were holding me back. But then when I started, I decided, you know what, my exit to freedom, my freedom in plan was going to be through real estate investing. I always wanted to do something with real estate investing. I tried many different types of real estate investing. At one point, I went out and I found a house. Oh man, this thing was a shack. I found the shack. I went and I told the owners, hey, look, I'll buy this house from you, but I didn't know how to price the house, right? I didn't know. So what I did was I called another real estate investor up and I said, hey, listen, come look at this house with me. And we get there, the guy walks in and he says, hey, listen, I'll buy this house from you for $65,000. And I'm like, okay, well, the problem is that I don't really have it under contract yet, because I didn't know how much to pay. So let me go get it back under contract. And the guy says, oh yeah, no problem. Well, when you get under contract, call me and, maybe offer them 60. And I did. I called the guy up and I offered him 60. Well, what I didn't know at the time was that same real estate investor that offered me 65, he went right to the source. He went around me, and I didn't have it under contract because I was new. I was scared. He went to the actual owners of the property, and he made them an offer of $67,000. And all of a sudden, I'm talking to them about $60,000. I was just trying to make a $5,000 spread and they wouldn't even talk to me. I couldn't even understand why. Like, what's the problem? And then I later found out that the guy ended up buying it for more money because he went directly to them. So, that's one of the stories where like I hit failure trying to even become a house flipper because like I didn't know what I was doing. And you know what? If sometimes when you don't know what you're doing, it's just easier to just say, well, I tried it and I quit. But I still wanted to be that real estate investor. Then I started investing in mobile homes. And geez, you want to talk about a scary business? Mobile homes is a scary business. I mean, the people that you deal with and everything. I bought 2 mobile homes, sold them, and I walked away saying never, ever again. Then I went to tax lien investing, and okay, tax lien investing will make you some money, but the problem with tax lien investing is this: you're only going to make a few percentage. Okay, like you think you're going to end up with the property. You rarely end up with the property. What you end up with sometimes is a lot of junk, and if you're lucky, you might get 60% on your money, but that's rare. Most of the time, it's less than that. So, I always struggled with this whole real estate investing, but then I decided this is it. This is my path to freedom. If other people can do it, I can do it. And then I had to really confront that first fear that I had, which was, man, and it's a stupid fear. I know it is, but maybe you can relate to this. I thought, man, what happens? What would happen if I go out there and I mail these offer letters and nobody accepted them? Literally, that stops a lot of people from literally starting their real estate investing careers or businesses. Is they think, well, what if I mail all these letters and nobody accepts the offer? Well, I understand that because I've had times even doing real estate investing where that happens. But as I was confronting this fear that I had, the situation, I was confronting this fear, the one thing that I turned to is a technique called pre-mortem planning. And let me talk about pre-mortem planning for a minute. A lot of top business schools teach this whole concept of performing a pre-mortem before you get going. And if you've ever watched a medical show, or maybe you're in the medical industry, you know that after a patient dies, all of the doctors, supposedly from what I see on TV, all the doctors get together and they sit down and they go, well, what went wrong? And the other doctor has to explain, and they all like nitpick everything. That's the postmortem, right? It does a lot of good for training doctors of what to look out for. It doesn't do the patient any good after he's passed away. But see, the thing is that it is possible to do a pre-mortem. And when you do a pre-mortem, and this is what I did, is I sat down, I did a pre-mortem. And basically what happens is in the pre-mortem is you sit down and you start to make a list of, okay, let's say that the business failed. Let's say that this venture or this project completely failed. It's over with, it failed. What are the reasons that it failed? What killed the project? When I was at that big company, we would do this thing. We would sit down and we'd say, okay, look, we got this big initiative. And a year from now, the thing we've determined that it failed. What killed it? And people would chime in. Being a group of people, a group of peers, they would chime in. What about this? What about that? At one point, I remember I was on one of these pre-mortems, and someone yelled out and said, "Hey, the CEO no longer works here anymore." That's a valid concern, right? Or the CEO retires and the new management doesn't like this project. And I actually had that happen to me. Is the new CEOs didn't like one of the projects that I was working on, which is like, geez, we've wasted a lot of time and money on this thing. So if you sit down and you start to build this whole list of potential failures, what could kill this project, you get this nice list. And it's not something that you have to do in one setting. You can go back and start to make a list and go, yeah, what about this one? Or what about that one? And then as you start to build this list, you can then start to build in things that you can do to compensate for the failure. I mean, honestly, there's some things that you just can't plan around. I mean, there will be failures. I actually had somebody that recently told me that the business that they were in, they absolutely hated the business. They'd been doing it for a few years. They just hated it. They wanted out. So, could they have pre-mortem that thing? Absolutely. They could have pre-mortem it and said, well, what if I hate this business? Well, what are my exit strategies? Could I sell it? Could I shut it down? What's my financial risk? And all of these components. But I think that when you have these failures, or you feel like, okay, well, I know I'm capable of this, but there's something holding me back. It's your body telling you, don't do it. Don't do it, because your body's trying to convince you not to do things, and you have to really control the situation. So my first technique for really overcoming these fears is just what I just said, the pre-mortem. Sit down and build a pre-mortem. Now, there's a guy, maybe you've heard of the guy. His name is Tim Ferriss. And Tim Ferriss, if you don't know who he is, well, he's a popular author. He wrote the book 4-Hour Work Week, 4-Hour Diet, 4-Hour whatever. He wrote a book, a bunch of these things. But he also has a popular podcast, and he's been on TED Talk. And one of his most popular TED Talks is about fear setting. And Tim Ferriss, as he talks about how he will go out and fear set, it's very similar to performing a pre-mortem that I just talked about. I really do like the way that Tim talks about this whole fear setting exercise that he does. I'm going to show you an example of one here in a second, but ultimately what he does is he says, hey, look, take out a piece of paper, draw 3 columns on that piece of paper, and when you draw those 3 columns, at the top of it, write define, prevent, and repair. So let's look at these. You can go out there and you can, here's an example of one, define the problem. What's the worst that could happen? Prevent. What can you do to prevent this from happening? And then repair. How do you repair it if something goes wrong? My buddy, so you'll see this is very close to doing a pre-mortem. This is a different structure for the pre-mortem. It's the fear setting exercise. But if you really go through and start to write these things down, you'll start to see that any potential failure point that you might have could be easily addressed. For example, when I was venturing out and I knew my corporate gig was in fact ending, I was a nervous wreck about health insurance, because what does a sole entrepreneur, a sole employee do for health insurance? Well, there's programs out there that you can go and take advantage of. Today we have basically Obamacare or affordable health care, and insurance companies are more willing to work with single payers as opposed to having to be part of a group policy. So there's things that you can do, but if you write down that fear and you address it, you're going to be okay because you're planning ahead. A buddy of mine, his name is Mark Podolsky. Basically, when he goes through or he went through this fear setting exercise that Tim Ferriss writes out, he actually wrote out that one of his potential failure points there was actually becoming homeless. He defined the problem. What happens if I'm homeless? And what can he do to prevent from being homeless? Well, he basically came up with some ideas of how he could prevent from being homeless. And then what I think is really funny is that he went out and he even said, okay, well, how do I repair this? And he came up with a whole homeless strategy. The whole homeless strategy was that he was going to move to Newport Beach, California, one of his favorite spots, move to Newport Beach, California. He was going to live on the beach. He was going to join a fitness center for $10 a month or something so that he could shower. He was going to go to the mall, which is a very high-end, beautiful mall out there. He was going to go to the mall, and he was going to basically get food as they go to dump it at the end of the evening. So he had this whole plan down based on this Tim Ferriss exercise, or even the pre-mortem exercise. It doesn't matter. Because ultimately, you see, as you start to address these things, you can get very granular with this, and you'll start to realize, like, everything has an answer. You may not like the answers, but man, how much better is it when you've planned ahead for something like, I don't know, being homeless, than surprise, you're now homeless. If you find yourself in that situation, what do? Well, you take out your log and you go, well, I already planned for this. This is what I'm going to do, and now you execute that plan. And that is one of the benefits of doing this whole fear setting exercise. And I think that when you go through this and go through this type of approach to confront your fears, what happens is you begin to open up and you begin to understand that anything that you're confronted with, especially when it comes to business, is manageable. You may not like the way that you have to go do it, But ultimately, when you move from kind of this fear holding you back to knowing what the path is forward, man, the fear just diminishes. My buddy, his name is John. John is a former Navy SEAL. And I asked him once, because this guy is just absolutely crazy. I asked John, hey, why is it that you seem like you're fearless? Why is that? And he basically walked me through some of the training that the Navy SEALs do and becoming prepared for encountering just crazy, unknown situations. And one of the things that I'll never forget, he told me, he said that as you're trained to become a Navy SEAL, they basically teach you how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you think about, even if as you're sitting there in your corporate job, dreaming about the lifestyle that you want, and you just think, well, man, I'm comfortable here. That comfortableness is really the thing that holds a lot of people back. The other thing that you can do a lot, and that a lot of people do not even think about this, is they can go through, and you can go through and run training exercises. I want you to think for a minute about a Navy SEAL. A Navy SEAL, they train over and over and over and over again. If I said over again too many times, they train constantly for situations, known and unknown. And the more you train, even if you're not out there actually doing something like running, the better you are prepared for situations that might come. So oftentimes what I would do, especially when I was trying to make this transition from my corporate job to the point where I thought that I might have to leave the company or lose my job, what I would do is I would sit there and I would think through, okay, well, if this happens, this is what I would do. If that happens, this is what I would do. It's a way of saying, yes, I'm concerned about these things, but I have a plan. And if you just train mentally for these things, it's not like you can go out there and train for business. But if you run through scenarios in your head all of the time and go, well, if I do this, then that happens, or if I do this, then this happens, ultimately what happens is when these situations start coming at you, you now know, I can solve this one, I can solve this one, or I can't solve these, but here's a different solution for it. There's a guy named Jack Canfield. He's one of the co-authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he wrote a book called The Success Principles. And in the Success Principles, and I will tell you, this is a book that some people talk about, this book changed my life. And some people love to talk about how Rich Dad, Poor Dad changed their lives. And I think, it's something that is an eye-opener. Right out of the gate of this book, Success Principles by Jack Canfield, the book basically gave me a new perspective on things. Because ultimately, I think what happens is we worry about things that we really can't control. And as you know, you can't worry about things that you can't control. And Jack Canfield actually has a formula that he talks about. He talks about the E, the letter E, plus R equals O. Let's talk about that. The E is the event. You cannot control the events in your world. You can't control what day some bad newsletter is going to appear in the mail to you. You can't control any of the events around your life. But what you can control is you can control how you react to those. And I think that when you start to plan out, well, if this happens, this is how I would react to it. If you mentally train for these things, well, then what will happen is you will be in a much better situation to confront your fears when they actually come to come to face you. Now, part of that equation I just talked about, the E is the event, the R is the reaction, and the O, well, that's the outcome. So we can't control the events. The only thing that we can control is our reaction to those events. So the events are coming, and all I can do is control it. Think of the Karate Kid. Someone throws a kick, and he can swipe down with his hand. That's going to produce the outcome. He can't predict the event. He can respond, and that will produce the outcome. And so when I think about going back to when I had my corporate gig and I was afraid, this one thing, the E plus R equal O, really kind of helped me out as well. The pre-planning or the post-mortem, whether you want to do that or the fear setting exercise, but also the mental training to be ready to encounter whatever's going to come to you. In 2017, because I had been able to replace my income and I was living the dream, the life that I always wanted, I did have something kind of cool happen. I had an opportunity come that would allow me to go out and learn how to fly planes. And since I was in high school, I wanted to be that pilot. Look, when I was in high school, okay, the popular movie was like Top Gun. All right, Tom Cruise, The Need for Speed. I saw that movie and I wanted to be a pilot. I did. I wanted to be in the military. And I went and I told my mom, I want to be in the military. I want to be a pilot. And she said, no. And I'm like, okay, mom. So I didn't do it. And I thought, like, okay, I guess I'll never learn how to fly a plane. And then I would get on planes for my corporate gig, traveling across the country. And guess what? I'm there and I'm looking at these pilots and I'm looking at all these switches and I'm like, not for me. I had my opportunity. But in 2017, I found myself in a very cool situation. I found myself in a situation where I had a nice income coming in from my business and I had time freedom because I had built up a lifestyle business that would allow me to go and to like live life the way I wanted to. And I'm in my kitchen one day and one of my son's friends says, hey, yeah, I'm taking flying lessons and I just got back. And he was talking to my son and I was like, whoa. Hold on, brother. What are you doing? He's like, I'm learning how to fly a plane. I'm like, how do you do that? Like the only way I knew how to do it was the Air Force, or I knew that there was a school, Embry-Riddle, or some aviation schools, but how are you doing this again? And he's like, yeah, you just go down to the airport down there in downtown and take flying lessons. They'll give you a discovery flight. I was like, whoa. Okay, I looked at my son. I said, you want to go learn to fly a plane? My son's like, yeah. 2 days later, we find ourselves down at the flight school. And as we get into the plane, the instructor says, hey, who's going to sit in the front? And I'm like, me. So I go sit in the front. As you can see, it's like a Trojan horse here. The lessons were going to be for me. Shh. So then I get there. My son's in the back seat. We go up. We fly around. I loved it. I was having a blast. I was living my dream. Then we land and I talk to the instructor and he basically says, hey, look, I said, what's the best way to do this? And he said, well, you know, if you take lessons a few times a week and you commit to it, you'll pick it up pretty fast. Now, one of the primary things that they teach you when you're learning how to fly a plane, obviously, is to land. That's pretty important. Taking off and landing is pretty important. There's old jokes around some of the airports that say flying lessons, takeoff's free, landing's $5. Okay, because landing's pretty important. But one of the key things about landing a plane is that you have to learn how to fly the plane slow. So if you've ever seen a plane pulling a banner, that plane is going pretty slow because it has a lot of drag on it because of the whole banner thing. And when you go to land a plane, really what you're doing is you're flying that plane fairly close to the stall speed because you got to slow the plane down to land it. Now, when people hear the word stalling a plane, or if I tell you like, hey, would you like to be in the plane when it stalls? What would you say in the comments? Tell me, what would you say? Do you want to be in the plane when the plane stalls? And most people would be like, no way, I don't want to be in a plane when it stalls. But see, to be a pilot, you have to learn how to stall the plane. And the wording there, stalling a plane, is a little tricky. And the reason it's tricky is because when you think of stalling a car, you think of the engine dying and, you know, it can't start the car again, it doesn't start again. But when you stall a plane, that's not what happens. What happens is the engine is still going, but what happens is the wings lose the ability to produce lift. And so then what happens is the plane wants to go down, right? Like the nose will go down. And as a pilot, you have to know when you stall a plane, you have to know how to recover that, because it's easy to stall a plane when you're taking off. It's easy to stall a plane, well, when you're landing, because if you get too slow, you can stall the plane, and you got to be able to know how to control that plane. So one of the tests that the FAA checks out, and Jeremy says, nope, I don't blame you, Jeremy, but you'll see. I'm gonna show you guys a stall here in a minute, so just hang tight. Now, one of the tests that the FAA gives you is they want you to stall the plane. In order to be a pilot, you have to stall the plane and then recover. And you have to recover typically within 100 feet. So you're at this altitude, you stall the plane, it goes down, you got to recover it within 100 feet. So I'm going to show you a video of stalling the plane here, and I'll kind of pull this in together. So let's look. I want to take you with me as we stall this plane. And this is a short video clip, but you and I are going to go on a flying lesson, one of my first flying lessons, and let's go stall this plane. Here we are. We are in the plane. This guy over here on the right is my instructor. I'm there on the left, and yes, that is a tiny plane. Let's go. You're going to hear, hold on. You're going to hear this horn like yelling at me that the plane is about to stall, and yet you're not supposed to do anything with it until the plane actually stalls. Ready? Let's go. Let's go stall the plane. Here we are. We're in the plane, and let's go. So now you'll see that the engine, or hear that the engine's about to. There's the horn. Hold it off. Holding it off. There's our stall. We're recovering the plane. We're pulling it back up again. And we survived. We did. Now, the wording, stalling a plane, as Jeremy says, oh, let's see, Peter did his discovery flight in Dallas. That's right. Yeah. The thing about stalling a plane is this. When you first hear the word stalling a plane, it might make you sweat. And in fact, it made me sweat. But once you do it a few times, you realize I don't even need that instructor there to do it. I can do it and still control the plane. How do you do that? It's through training. It's through the training process. And when you train and you apply these other components about, making sure that that you have done a pre-mortem, or the fear setting exercise, and then you keep training, even if it's here mentally, what will happen is it will make you stronger and more capable in order to face these unknown situations so that you are ready when the unknown arrives. Isaac says the other guy is brushing his teeth. Yeah, the other guy. If you watch it, if I were to go back and replay this, let me reset this thing up for a minute. If you go back, his name is Ivandro. I love this guy. If you go back and you watch his hand basically doesn't even touch the other yoke there. He basically just, let me just put the plane there. Here, watch him one more time. Watch this. Here we go. If you just watch his hand, you can't even barely see it. But he's not even doing anything. He's just, there he goes. Like, you see his hand? He just moved his hand. After we recovered, he just takes his hand off. He's pointing to the altitude. Yeah, you got to recover. You did a good job. All right. Too funny for me. I think it's hilarious. But that's the thing. And Jeremy says, what kind of plane was that? That was a Cessna 162. It's a two-seater. You don't want to be driving across country in that thing. That's for sure. In 2016, I did receive word from my company that the job had been outsourced. And I was able to definitely replace my income by that point. But the whole thing here is that when you confront these fears, you start to realize that you do not need to let the fears control you, and you can definitely create the lifestyle that you want. It's not too hard. All you got to do is keep working for it. And whenever you feel like you're pulling back and you're not sure that you're going to be able to continue, go back. Make sure that you dig deep inside, understand what is it that's holding you back, confront those fears, write them down, plan for their demolishment, and you will plow through all those fears to create the lifestyle that you want. I appreciate you being here tonight. I'm here Thursday nights, So make sure that you stay tuned. I'll see you guys next Thursday. And by the way, there's a whole collection of other videos available that I think they're right, I don't know, over there. Make sure you watch another video to keep your learning going. And with that, guys, I will see you next week. Take care and good night.